Coffee, check. Brewer systems, check. Brewing, check. Coffee served. Check. Brewing Better Days is more than a podcast. It's a movement. It's for the first responders, the veterans, healthcare professionals, and all of their families. This is Brewing Better Days. And now your host, Eric Hadley.
Don't forget that's a 32.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Brewing Better Days, a coffee shop talk podcast. My name's Eric Hadley. I'm your host, and today I have an amazing guest with me, Springfield Police Chief Paul Williams. Chief, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great, Eric. Good to see you.
So, for those who don't know, we had a little hiccup. We actually started the podcast, and I forgot to hit the record button.
I was going to say it was a technical glitch, but really it was an Eric glitch.
I have no problem admitting when I make mistakes. You don't get to success without this.
Man, we rolled right. It was good. It was good.
So I had quite the lengthy, which we'll kick it off again. I'm going to give everybody a little backdrop on who this gentleman is that's sitting in front of me. Chief Williams holds a master's degree in criminal justice administration from Northeastern Oklahoma State University and a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Northern Michigan University. He's a graduate of the Senior Management Institute for Police. In 2009, he graduated from the 207th session of the FBI National Academy, and in 2019, he completed the DOJ FBI Law Enforcement Executive Development Seminar. He instructs criminal justice courses at Missouri State University. He was certified as an instructor for the IACP Leadership in Police Organizations program. He's a Missouri Post certified law enforcement instructor. In 2020, he was appointed by U.S. Attorney General Barr to co-chair the Grants Administration Committee of the Presidential Commission on Law Enforcement and Administration of Justice. In 2021, was appointed to represent the IACP on the National Justice Council Steering Committee. He previously served as president of the Missouri Police Chief Association, is chairman of the Missouri Police Chiefs Charitable Foundation. He was selected by his peers as the MPCA's Police Chief of the Year in both 2015 and 2016. He was honored as one of Springfield Business Journal's Men of the Year in 2016. Chief Williams is married to his wife, Regina. They have 3 kids, 1 granddaughter, and he's also a believer who attends Redeemer Lutheran Church. Chief, did I miss anything?
You didn't, but so whenever you hear something for the second time, you catch something. So I just wanted to comment, when I went to the FBI National Academy, it was in 2001. September 2001, if that rings a bell for anybody about what was going on in the world at that time. But I was actually en route to the FBI to do my meet and greet before kicking off and going to Quantico on September 11th, 2001. So it was a unique experience in more ways than one, but just that date, the significance of that date and what I was getting ready to do at that point during my career, I always like to mention.
So on September 11th that year, what were you doing?
So on September 11th, FBI National Academy, for those who don't know, it's a highly selective program. Only about 1% of law enforcement professionals around the world get to go to that. And so it took me about 7 years of application and working through the department and then being selected. So once you're selected, they have kind of an orientation session. Usually 3 or 4 folks from every state or FBI NA chapter get to go, and you go meet with the local FBI officials. They kind of introduce you to what the program's going to be. It's 10 weeks in Quantico, away from family and friends and physical and mental and really emotional experience. But on the way, so you take your spouse, significant other. We were driving. I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma at the time, where I was a police officer at the time, and driving Oklahoma City to the FBI office when the planes hit the towers. So actually heard it on the radio, diverted, went to the station. The chief, the command staff, we all gathered around in the conference room. FBI called and said, "Hey, don't come. We don't know what's going to go on at this point." Went home. A couple days later, they called and said, "We think we're still going to have the class, but we're not sure." Waited another. We were supposed to leave in about 10 days. week later, they said, okay, we're going to have the FBI class, so make plans to come to Quantico. Unique experience when we were there because we were the only people in the FBI Academy. Usually there's in-service training for agents, there's new agent class, there's in-service classes going on. Every agent was busy somewhere in the world working on the aftermath from that terrorist attack. So it was just 253 of us in the entire campus for 10 weeks. We did get to go. I won't go into everything else, but I'll tell you that one of the best experiences was we actually went to the Pentagon. So 3 weeks after 9/11 happened, they're still digging through the rubble. And we went and visited with the folks that were there, and then we went up to New York at Ground Zero. As a group, we all wanted to help. We offered our service to do whatever. They said, "Man, we got this." We went and had a meal with first responders who were digging through the rubble and recovering at that point, recovering bodies and trying to get through everything and evidence. So, a very, very impactful, unique experience that. When I think about that, where I was, what I was doing, that certainly my career up to that point has impacted me moving forward in my career as well. So anyway, that just popped into my head when you're reading that, and the year was missing from that attending the FBI Academy, the 207th session, and so we kind of characterized ourselves as the class that almost wasn't. And then on campus, if you ever have opportunity to go there, we each class does a memorial gift. Ours is a rendering of the Twin Towers, and we actually got a piece of shrapnel from there and did a granite outlay of the Pentagon with the Twin Towers and marble in the middle, and a memorial in the garden there at the NA. So everybody that I've I either sent there or gone associated with, man, they send me a picture back of, hey, your memorial's still here. It's great. Your class really made a difference. So
I think I would venture to say that anybody that's at least Gen X can remember exactly what they were doing that day.
Oh, yeah.
Like for me, I was in. We were taking over a ship that was going from the Navy, commissioning it for Military SEAL of Command. It was in a shipyard in Philadelphia. The girl that I was dating, a girl at the time, she lived in New York. Her birthday was on September 9th. I had duty that day, so I couldn't go. On the 10th, I actually went to New York City. Small town country boy, Here I am, first time ever. Well, second or third time, but the being in New York City with her for her birthday. She loved sushi, so we went downtown, had sushi. At that point, I wasn't a big sushi guy, so it was kind of choked that down. But
the things we do for love,
yeah,
or you thought at the time,
exactly. I think it was like 7:10 at night. She actually takes me to the towers, and so here I am with my hand on the tower at like 7:10 at night.
On the 9th,
on the 10th,
on the 10th.
Wow. On the 11th, I get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, drive back to Philly. I'm actually in the lower level main one, working on a fuel oil coalescer for a gas turbine engine, and all of a sudden it was just buzz, the shipyard going nuts, and the skeleton crew that we had, the captain ended up kicking everybody off the ship except the crew, locked the ship down. We all sat in the captain's office watching the towers come down, and while we were sitting there, the Norfolk, command out of Norfolk called and asked if anybody had steam turbine experience. Well, I was one of the engineers that raised my hand, and next thing I know, they were talking about busing us down to Baltimore to light up the USNS Comfort, the hospital ship.
Okay.
So I'm like, Captain, I've got a Tahoe. I can take myself, one of the other engineers. And so he released us from the ship. We ran back to the hotel, grabbed all my... I remember something specifically because it was laundry day for me. So it's literally at the mesh laundry bag, and I'm just like throwing all the clothes in there, and off we went. That day, it was... You get on the highway, and I pegged it. Just being honest, hit the rev limiter on the Tahoe, backed off 2 miles an hour, hit cruise control all the way to Baltimore, and literally spent the next 3 days 24/7 lighting off the steam plant for the hospital ship. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Crazy.
Memories, man. That's
Exactly.
something you'll never forget. That's a great point, man. Anybody who anybody who's alive who has a memory at that point who's not going to know exactly where they were.
Yeah.
On September 11th, 9:00 in the morning.
So as we kick this off, Chief, one of the questions I love to ask in the beginning: are you a coffee drinker?
Absolutely. So you made me a really nice, flavorful, frothy latte.
Nice
but
little
I gotta be
latte.
honest with you, I'm an old graveyard cop, man. So hot and black is how I drink my coffee normally.
There you go.
But I had a couple cups of that before I got here, so I'm good to go.
Definitely pro-caffeinated for you today.
Absolutely.
So as we get into some of this, I just kind of want to jump right into it.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share your journey in becoming a first responder and what inspired you to pursue that career?
So that's an easy one. That's a softball to start off with. You're a good interview, man. Start with the easy ones. There might be some more difficult later, but lob it in. I'm going to knock it out of the park. I'm a third generation police officer. My dad and my grandpa were both cops in Detroit. And I grew up in Detroit. So both of them spent 25 years there in policing. So I can't really think of anything else. I mean, there were other things I thought I wanted to do as I was growing up, but probably about from the time I was 5, I'm going to be a cop. I want to go into policing. Watching my dad, my grandpa had retired by that time, and he spent 25 years as a tool and die maker after he retired from the police department. So I just knew him as a machinist, and then learned later that he'd spent 25 years there, most of it as a motor cop in Detroit. But being around my dad, he was on the tactical team. He made sergeant. He worked some covert, some undercover stuff. He did a lot of investigations and just making a difference in the community that way. And so from the time I was 5, man, I always wanted to be a cop. I went to school for it, and haven't wavered from that. This is my 44th year in policing now. So. I'm not gonna match Dad and Grandpa. I'm not gonna match the 25 and 25. I'll be retired before I hit 50. But it's been a very, very worthwhile and career that I couldn't imagine doing anything different.
Well, I can say from a personal perspective, I want to say thank you to you because I've traveled the world. I've been to 59 different countries. I've seen some craziness and I've seen some awesomeness. My personal belief is that if you're in America anywhere, whether you're a homeless individual on the street or a successful person, if you're in America, you're blessed. And I can argue that without a doubt. But living here, I grew up in Paris, Texas, always felt safe. Living here in Springfield, Missouri, I just want to say thank you to you. I do feel safe. I know my family does here. And you were actually talking prior to us kicking off the conversation. You just recently found out some stats.
Yeah. So let me back up a little bit. I said I grew up in Detroit, and then but I spent 30 years in Tulsa, Oklahoma as a police officer and progressed through the ranks. And when I was named the chief here, I was asked, people want to do some comparisons. And I said, Springfield's a great community. It's safe. We got some issues. I said, but at 14 years ago, I said what I saw in Springfield was when I moved to Tulsa from Detroit, what it looked like. And I said, my goal is to keep Springfield from being the Tulsa of today. In other words, the increase in crime and violence. And so my goal for the last more than a decade has been to keep Springfield safe while managing increase in population and activities, et cetera. So I said I've moved. You've been in 59 countries, man. I've only been in 4, so I got a ways to go. But I said I've moved 3 times. I've gotten smaller and safer each time, and that's where Springfield is. So, while crime ebbs and flows, actually it's like the stock market. Coming out of COVID and the issue with George Floyd and all the negative narrative on law enforcement back in about 2020, we had a huge spike in criminal activity, and that had been kind of growing. And so I say we kind of reached our high water mark. And my goal was to take the department and work with the community to drive those numbers down. And so I just got yesterday morning the first 6 months of crime reports for this year, and I can say we're in our 3rd year of steady, slowly decline in crimes occurring in Springfield. So I hope that continues. I mean, we had some precipitous drops the first year or two. We're talking 16, 20% in various categories, and we've leveled off into that 2-3%. I'd like to say we could totally eliminate some crimes. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. Human nature being what it is, and sinful beings and evil people, there's always going to be that out there. But our goal is to keep it as low as possible, to prevent as much as we can, and then when bad things do happen to good people, to find and hold those responsible accountable and take them off the streets.
Well, I definitely appreciate you, your leadership, and everything that your officers are doing to keep this community safe. I see it. Like I said, I can compare and contrast to a lot of experiences, and so thank you, sir. With all the stuff that you have to deal with, what are some of the challenging situations that you faced in the line of duty, and how have you handled them?
So, like I said, I have 44 years in law enforcement. I'm going to focus on my time as chief, because that's kind of what I'm hearing, what we're talking about, and reflective of this community. So I can say the most challenging, most difficult two things that I faced as a chief that I hope I never have to face again. One was the abduction and rape and death of Haley Owens here in our community. Young 10-year-old girl that was abducted by just an evil person. And although we as police officers, our job is to find who did it, bring him to justice. We're able to do that. And that happened, but the impact of that little girl dying, I think, reverberated throughout the community, and probably at the time the hardest day I've ever had as a police officer, to be able, to deal with that circumstance, to have to stand in front of the cameras and talk to people about what happened, and in a community that you should feel safe, and your kids being out playing in the front yard should absolutely feel safe, and not have to worry about somebody, just a random abduction in some ways. It really put the community on edge, and I think it's taken us some time to get past that, and I always look for a positive in everything. So in a positive, I think it made people more cognizant, more realization that you have to be aware of your surroundings and do everything you can to keep your kids safe. So that's one. And then secondly, Chris Walsh was shot and killed, along with some other folks during a rampage by, once again, just an evil person with a rifle that decided to go on a rampage. And he'd been shooting around town, and then kind of got cornered at a come and go up on Chestnut, and just a horrific situation. The first officer died in the line of duty in Springfield, Missouri, in 80 years. Uh-huh. So we had not experienced anything like that since 1932, and having that happen under my watch, if you will, when it's out of your control, but and maybe it's because I'm older now, but I say my officers are kind of like my family, and so it's like your kids, and as a parent would feel when you lose one, something bad happens, it affects you greatly. So those two things, Chris's death, and then the aftermath, and that, and then just going through everything with the family and with my department and how it affected people here, is very. Those two things, probably the most difficult and most challenging times. And I can talk about crime and staffing and everything else, but when you really think about impactful moments, those two. Now, I know some of my peers around the country, that may happen, more regularly, unfortunately. The death of an officer or the abduction and death of a child. And of course, the bigger the city is, the more it's going to happen. But for me, those are two unique, unusual occurrences that I hope, not only me, but I hope this community never experiences again.
Yeah, I remember the day with Chris Walsh. I woke up like 4 o'clock in the morning. My phone was just blowing up, and found out about it. And we reached out to you guys, ended up brewing like 20 gallons of coffee, and got permission to come down and just set up the coffee at the command center local, and just offered assistance to do whatever we could that day. I ran and got pizzas for the deputies that were there, or the police officers that were doing the investigation, because, a lot of people don't realize, just like you said, it is a brotherhood, right? You guys, when you go through fire, forged through adversity, and you're dealing with the highs and lows of everything, it builds a bond, and it's definitely a brotherhood. And to lose one like that, it's hard.
I don't know how to explain to people what that feeling is. I mean, the community is certainly impacted. I mean, here's one of their servers and protectors that they've lost, or I'll even go back a couple years before that, Aaron Pearson, who an officer that was shot and survived. I mean, thank God. I mean, it's a blessing that what Aaron went through, and then after that, Mark Preby was paralyzed right out in front of the police station. I mean, so very thankful that those two men I still get to see and talk to, and their families are there, and their lives are certainly impacted. But and having the blessing of having them around is certainly a gift. But how do although the community is supportive and they understand what you just said, going through that as a member of that law enforcement or first responder family, it's an entirely different impact on you. And we've lost some officers who have stepped away from the profession because of those instances like that they're just not able to come to work and deal with that every day. And so I thank God, and I think the community should too, for the men and women that deal with that, accept it, move forward. They're better for it, and they still come to work each and every day, putting on that badge and that gun, and willing to step out there in between. It's a cliche, I know, but I absolutely believe it. There's a line between good and evil, and if men and women aren't willing to step up and man that line and keep the evil people from doing bad things to good people, this community and this country would just devolve into chaos. And so I'm absolutely proud to be a part of that brotherhood, that sisterhood, for as long as I have, and I feel in my current position, I absolutely love being able to provide assistance, training, education, equipment, knowledge, guidance, framework for the men and women that do that and make the community safer.
I don't think a lot of people understand, when it comes to the veteran space, everybody shows support for veteran and what they do. But when you put it in a context, like a veteran, when they're stateside, they're at a base, you're doing a normal 9-to-5 kind of job, unless you're in like the special forces, which is ultimately like 2% of the entire military populace. But I don't think people realize, yes, a veteran deploys and goes through potentially hell on deployment and then has to process that, but they're deployed 8-12 months, maybe a little bit longer at a time. Again, unless you're in the special forces. But I don't think people realize law enforcement, they strap up every day. Every day they're going out to fight evil, and they're having to face the atrocities and horrors and deal with all that. How do you cope with the stress and trauma of being a first responder?
I have the benefit of years of experience and learned that. I can tell you I didn't always address that and cope with it the right way. And I try to impart that knowledge to to new officers, younger officers. And I said the first thing is policing is something that until you realize it's what you do and not who you are, it's much harder to cope with some of that. I saw that during after George Floyd, with all the negative people were taking all that personal. They're talking about bad cops in a different place, and it's like, man, it's 1,000 miles away from here, and that's not us. But people identify so much with their profession, and that's every profession. Doctors, lawyers, factory workers. But policing it becomes part of who you are very early on, and it took me a while to realize that you have to compartmentalize and put that into, that's what I do. And yes, it's part of who I am, but it's not all of who I am. So realizing that, and then surrounding yourself with faith, family, and friends. I can't emphasize the three F's. My faith journey, my relationship with God, and being able to turn to Him in a very personal way, really number one thing. Family, my wife, my kids, they ground me. And as especially in this role, sometimes as a chief, people expect more and kind of put you up at a higher level. And I come home and I get dropped down to where I should be. All right, on a base level. And then friends and activities and hobbies and doing things outside of what we do in policing. So, training and driving and shooting and fighting. I mean, that's kind of the fun part of law enforcement. And I can tell you, every in-service class we have that involves one of those three things, they're overflowing. You get a legal aspect or a legal update or a policy update or something along those lines, and people, I got to go to this. So, but realizing that's not everything, and so having friends outside of that who aren't just cops, aren't just first responders, have other jobs, other areas to balance and realize that this isn't just this small little group of folks that all think and act the same way. Really helps you, keeps you grounded and gives you that wide perspective. So I've been blessed to, in some ways, to have those three things that have kind of stuck with me, and it's an intentional effort to engage in those three areas with faith, family, and friends, but it will allow you to keep some balance and some perspective.
Absolutely. So earlier we were talking about some of the toughest moments that you've had. Flip the script here, talking about the most impactful, most memorable. Can you describe a particular memorable or impactful incident that you've been involved in with law enforcement? Something that's
come on, man.
Upbeat and exciting.
Upbeat and exciting. I mean, so I guess once again I'll focus on my time here as a chief, and man, there's so many. You asked me for the negative, and boom, some things popped. Yeah. On a positive, I mean, little things and then big things. So
for me, when I first started Gotcha 6, I was in my home office. My son was like 3.5 years old and comes running the room, "Daddy, daddy, daddy." And I turn my chair to him, and he's jamming a pile of Legos in my face. And I'm like, "What's this, bud?" He's like, "It's my coffee maker. I'm going to help people too." That right there is like, I did the unthinkable. I super glued it together. It's actually sitting right there on the on the desk. Is like a little thing, but that to me is like such an upbeat kind of thing. That's kind of the moment. Something.
So let me. I'll start in the day I was sworn in as the chief of police. I mean, that's a career accomplishment,
right?
I said my dad and my grandpa were policemen, so I kind of laughed. Grandpa was a motor cop. Dad retired as a sergeant. I said, I'm going to make lieutenant because I'm gonna go a step higher. Never thought I'd be the chief, but when I was named the chief here at that swearing in ceremony and having my wife pin my badge on. And my kids standing there, and I've got this picture somebody took and gave me of the kid just standing there and her doing that, and it's like the family around you, all right. And we've talked before we started the podcast about God's plan isn't always your plan,
right?
So I fought God's plan on what I thought was my life for a couple years before finally letting Him lead me in the direction of coming to Springfield, Missouri, and so that's absolutely a highlight. Since then, I said there's so many. Every academy graduation is absolutely a highlight. I speak with every recruit class on day one and welcome them and challenge them, and then I meet with them 6 months later, those that survived the process, and congratulate them again, and then walking across the stage and handing them their badge, which is it's the last piece of equipment they get because they get everything else in practice with, but that's that accomplishment. And being able to shake that person's hand and look them in the eye and tell congratulations and thank you. Those are 14 years, and probably I'm trying to guess now. I probably had 20 plus academy classes, but I guarantee you I can close my eyes and think and remember each one of those as they come through.
So cool.
And then some significant when you in my role now, I direct and guide. So I live vicariously through the accomplishments of my officers.
Of others, yeah.
Okay, so solving a major crime, combating a crime spree, arresting a serial offender, I love hearing about that, and I'm joyous and thankful, and I'm celebrating with them, even though I didn't put the handcuffs on, I didn't do the groundwork, I didn't put the case together. And there are so many successes. I'm surrounded by so many accomplished and dedicated men and women that those things happen pretty much every day.
Nice.
Right. So I'm sorry I can't just pick
one.
No,
but it's awesome. It's one of the goals with this podcast is to kind of give people an insight to the ups and downs of first responders and what they have to deal with. So just to be able to share those kind of joyous moments is awesome. You had talked about the 20 plus academies that you've, what advice would you give somebody considering a career as a first responder? So
this is you need to think early about what you want to do, because actions have consequences. I can't tell you how many folks that have been through our process and get to a point and we discover something that either they admit to or we discover they didn't admit to, that you go, I'm sorry, man. For law enforcement, policing here in Springfield, Missouri, integrity, honesty, character, accountability, responsibility, good judgment are the essential. And there's some people that just won't make the cut. So for young people out there, be thinking about that. I mean, there's things you can overcome. I tell people when they ask me, I go, there are very few things before you get hired that you can't overcome, as long as you're honest and truthful and you fess up. There are some things that, if you've been arrested and convicted of a felony, I'm sorry, we're not taking it.
Yeah, right.
Okay. But they're in youthful indiscretions. That's why we have juvenile laws, and that's why we basically flip the script when you turn 18 to say you're going to start over again. So being mindful of those things. Now, after that, I said advice is, you need to be. I already talked about being a person of character, integrity, and honesty, but you need to be committed and dedicated to what you're going to be going through. And I don't think people realize that. It is a mental, physical, and emotional profession. And we start that day one in the academy. Unfortunately, it never fails. We usually lose someone in the first week or so who just doesn't understand the commitment. Mm-hmm. Someone maybe got a college degree in criminology, and then they went through the testing, and you see all that, but then they get there and they go, wow, I didn't realize this intense. So being ready for that and committing yourself. And then thirdly, everybody screws up. Everybody fails. Mm-hmm. You can't quit the first time you fail. I've probably learned more from my failures in my career than I have from successes. And so realizing that, acknowledging that, overcoming that, and then being better for it is the kind of people we're looking for. I don't want perfect people. I can't find any of them. Right. And I don't want someone who's going to quit at the first sign of adversity or failure. And I also don't want someone who's going to try to blame others for their failures. Accepting that responsibility and learning from it absolutely is essential.
I think kind of like going through boot camp or the military, if you'll go into it with a mindset that just let it happen, like let the process happen. You're going to get broken down for a reason, to establish the baseline and then build upon the foundation. And, last night we got done, I coach my son's football team. And so we had all the kids there, and I've been coaching the last couple of years. Every year it's just this constant battle of just like will of the kids. They don't take responsibility for the mistakes they made, and they get so wrapped up in their head about the mistake. This year, the 4 practices we've had so far this year, I'm seeing a massive change. Mm. These kids, they're just, they do something wrong, and you're like, hey, you did this wrong, to the pole and back. Mm-hmm. And no griping, no nothing. To just be able to accept it and grow. You cannot have success without failure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
impossible.
It's the basis of success.
Yeah, you're going to have more failure than anything.
Yeah.
But what are some of the common misconceptions about your profession that you would like to address?
I guess the first one is that people think police officers are perfect, and if they're not, then there's something wrong with them. People forget that we're not robots. All right, we're human beings like everything else. We're infallible, and people make mistakes. That's the number one thing. Number two is it's not like TV and the movies. There are some. We've been on the cop show a few times here, which their tagline, it's the exhibiting the days in the lives and the men and women in law enforcement, highlighting that. But even that, while it is true to life, it's still edited, to a point. So, and it's not the entire shift. All right, so it's not all running and gunning and putting bad guys in jail. That's a small percentage. You mentioned I teach at Missouri State, and I teach a policing course. And one of the first couple classes, I talk about what a day in the life of an officer is, and what, not just here but nationally, only about 2 to 5% of what a police officer does every single day is dealing with violent crime. Only about 15%, maybe 20 in some places, is dealing with crime in general. So what do you do the rest of the time? All right, well, there's traffic complaints, there's disputes, there's things that don't rise to criminal activity, there's community service, there's assisting people. It's a whole lot more. And then there's the paperwork and the follow-up and everything else that comes with that. So the misconception that one, that police shouldn't make mistakes, two, all they're trying to do is arrest people, and they don't really care about anybody else, and they don't spend their time doing things that we want them to do. And number three, and I just kind of mentioned this, that police officers don't care. That they're the officers I have the pleasure of working with are some of the most caring and empathetic people that you see. The problem is we don't do a very good job of telling people. As I'll say the other thing is people think officers are cocky or arrogant or badge heavy, and it's exactly the opposite. Humble, exceptions in every profession, but for the most part, humble, caring, empathetic, and don't want to tell our story. It is like pulling teeth every year to get my folks to write people up for awards. I see things every day that I go, this is fantastic police work. This is someone who helped someone in the community. This is someone who saved somebody's life. And they go, just another day. So getting people to realize that. And then lastly, seeing people as human beings, police officers as human beings. They're your brother, your sister, your uncle, the person you see at the coffee shop or at church or the gas station. And getting people to realize that outside the uniform, they're just like you and me.
I think if people will put things into perspective, let's be honest with yourself. You're human. You make mistakes every single day. The Bible's out there. The Bible has the 10 Commandments and everything you're supposed to abide by and everything that you're supposed to do. With all this stuff, how many times do you sin every day? How many times do you break the Bible? Like how many times you get up in the morning and instead of having a glass of water, you chug a overly sugared, drink. Are you taking care of your body? Because the Bible says you're supposed to do that, right? Or how many times when you're driving to work, somebody cuts you off and you're just, go off. Well, you just lost your temper.
Yeah.
Slow to speak. If you'll realize, hey, we're all human. Everybody makes mistakes and make mistakes hundreds of times a day. It's recognize that you're human, you make the mistake, and recognize and try and be better.
Yeah.
If you do that and put that into perspective, why can't we get along with everybody? Because, hey, there may be a day where, I'm going through some real tough stuff and somebody says something and the tone to which they said it triggers something.
Yeah.
We're all human.
Absolutely.
How has technology changed the way you do your job and the advancements? What advancements do you see going forward in the future?
Oh, immeasurably. I can tell you, it seems like technology slowly evolved, and over the last few years, it's exponentially evolving. So, and I'll date myself a little bit, but I started in 1981 in policing. All right, so driving a 1980 Plymouth Grand Fury, all right, and with a revolver and a speed loader, which was a huge advancement at the time. Instead of bullets in the belt loop on your gun belt, and no radio, no cameras, and no handheld radio. I mean, communication system from dispatch, but people look at me now like I'm crazy, and I go, yeah, I used to actually answer the radio and then write the call down with all the information on a pad of paper, either on the seat next to me or on a pad of paper that was rubber banded to the steering wheel as I'm driving to the call, to now where we have MDTs in the car and all the information comes in the computer. You've got not just a handheld radio, you got a body-worn camera that's recording everything, so both for the benefit of the citizens to make sure you're doing something right, but also for officers to go review and go, okay, what exactly happened when I got there and talked to that person. And we all have semi-automatic handguns. We've got taser, we've got pepper spray. You got things that those things used to keep officers and citizens safe, and even suspects safe when you're interacting. To crime analysis, I mean, literally, I can remember walking into the detective bureau when I was a young officer and seeing that map up on the wall with push pins. Okay, and once a month, once a week, maybe somebody would update it with the crimes that occurred, and you're all right. Do we have a trend of burglaries? I don't know. Let's look for the red push pins
all
from
the different
6
colors.
months ago to now. You have a crime analysis unit that pushes stuff out every morning about trending crime and areas, and officers can pull it up on their laptop in their car. To now, we're exploring AI technology, both facial recognition and computerizing all the data that's coming in and digesting it and spitting it out. So, just incremental, exponential improvements, and it's not going to slow down. All of it intended to keeping people safer, preventing and solving crimes quicker. It's absolutely a benefit to all of us to have technology. I'm technologically competent, all right, but I'm still amazed at things that people are able to show me that they can do, or we have the capability of doing. So I'm really looking forward to what the next generation is going to be able to do with that.
Nice. Well, Chief, I know time is obviously our most valuable asset, and greatly appreciate you coming out today, spending the time to kind of share a little bit about your backstory for the community that's out there. In what ways do you think the community, or what ways can the community support you guys and make things better for not only to support what you guys are doing, but also to support the community? How can the community get involved and help out?
So, man, you kind of threw me a softball at the beginning, softball at the end, man. It's an easy one. No,
T-ball. Get on base.
Yeah, thanks.
Runs batted in.
Number one thing, prayer. I tell people the easiest thing anybody can do for police officers in their community is pray for them. Pray for their safety. Pray for knowledge and wisdom and guidance as they deal with stuff. You don't know the impact that has. Number two, be supportive and thankful. It takes nothing to walk up to an officer and say, thank you for what you do. I had that last night. I was out with my family at dinner. I'm wearing shorts and a polo shirt, just leaving dinner. Some guy walks up to me in the parking lot and goes, Chief, I just want to thank you and the men and women in the police department for what you do in keeping us safe. People in this community do that, but it absolutely makes an impact on those officers when they hear that, because a lot of times what our officers deal with are the people that aren't thanking them for what they're doing, right? Mm-hmm. We deal with the worst of society because no one else wants to do that. So having those folks that are appreciative and of what they do, express that is absolutely worthwhile. And then third thing, community has to be involved and engaged in policing. 360 officers. We can't be everywhere all the time. So having the community be involved and vigilant and calling us and working with us when they see something that's out of place, when a crime's been committed and we're looking for tips, looking for witnesses. Man, step up and be that person that's going to be a part of keeping your community safe. Work with your local police officer, work with us when we're asking for your assistance, and be willing to engage on a daily basis.
Awesome. Well, Chief, if you're cool with it, I'd like to wrap up with a little prayer. And
Absolutely.
Lord God, thank you for this day. Thank you for the opportunity to have fellowship and to be able to sit down and talk with Chief today. Lord God, I pray for a hedge of protection around all law enforcement in this country. Anybody who steps up and serves their community, Lord God, I ask that you put a hedge of protection around them, a hedge of protection around their family, keep them safe, happy, and healthy. Lord God, I pray for all the officers, and I ask that you just shower them with blessing for all that they do, for the service that they do. Lord God, thank you for everything that you do in this country. Thank you for all your blessings. In Jesus' mighty name, I pray, amen.
Amen.
Well, Chief, I'm going to wrap this up here. Thank you, everybody, for coming to joining us for another episode of Brewing Better Days, the Coffee Shop Talk Podcast. My name's Eric Hadley. I'm your host. Until next time, stay pro-caffeinated.
You've been listening to Brewing Better Days. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit us up on Instagram at Brewing Better Days and check the website at www.brewingbetterdays.com. Hey, life's hard, but it sure is easier with a nice cup of coffee. See you next time on Brewing Better Days.